Hello, chums. It's Tarquin here. Well, it's all over. The nation's decided we can all sleep easy in our beds. We've been instructed to rejoice, as this is our Independence Day. Well, I'm not entirely convinced, but I might have a small sherry later on, just to be civil. You see, I still find myself rather confused by the whole issue. Apparently, we're now free from the rule of elitist, unelected European bureaucrats. Huzzah! Come October, we'll be ruled instead by elitist, unelected British bureaucrats. So that would be a good thing, wouldn't it? One can't help but feel one's missing something here. Oh, I don't know, it's all frightfully confusing for a simple trucker like me. I must say, though, I did feel awfully sorry for that nice Mr. Cameron. The look on his little face when he came out of number 10 to announce his resignation. I swear he was close to tears, you know. Oh, and his poor wife made to stand there in Downing Street in that harlequin outfit, as if it was all her fault. It must be an awful wrench for her, being turfed out of one's central London mansion like that. They say she's only just finished the dining room ceiling, too. I watched David's speech from a chic little transport cafe just off the A41 near Wolverhampton, and when the announcement was made, one of the other customers, an odious white van man, exclaimed loudly, "That's the last we'll see of that mutton-faced pig poker." Well, I thought, that's completely uncalled for. After all, it was only a youthful peccadillo, and who amongst us isn't guilty of one of those, eh? I remember a time at Eton, you know. The other boys had dared me to moon the headmaster from our dormitory window. It was the depths of winter, and somehow I managed to freeze my bottom to the window pane. I had to get nurse to release me. Frostbite, she called it. Stung like Hades all week. Yes, happy days of my youth. I say, wasn't it all rather lovely, the way Boris Johnson paid tribute to the Prime Minister like that? I expect we have to call him the ex-Prime Minister from now on, don't we? It was really quite moving when he confessed his sadness over David's resignation. What a pity those two never got the chance to go head-to-head, as they say, in the leadership race. I'm certain that Boris was rather looking forward to the cut and thrust of live television debates with his old chum. The light-hearted insults, the mock accusations of incompetence and buffoonery. What fun! Yes, Mr. Johnson's life will be much emptier now. Now there's no credible opponent left in the race. I thought it awfully decent of Boris to say that Mr. Cameron had delivered a one-nation Conservative government, which, fair play to David, is a jolly hard thing to do when only a fraction of the nation actually voted for you. I was especially impressed when Mr. Johnson acknowledged David's role in making Britain the most dynamic economy in Europe. Quite how he achieved this while we're still under the yoke of the EU and its paltry captive market of over 500 million consumers, I'll never know. Boris rather touchingly praised Mr. Cameron for his special brand of compassionate conservatism. I'm sure this was appreciated too by the thousands of disabled claimants who David inspired to throw away their crutches, get out of their wheelchairs and dive back into the challenging world of 0 hours minimum wage employment. Why, the man's a virtual saint. As a matter of fact, I hear the United Nations Commission on Human Rights is looking very closely at David's welfare policies. I expect they're keen to replicate them elsewhere in the world. I didn't catch the end of Mr. Johnson's speech because one's double egg and chips arrived at that point. Something to do with Britain having a glorious opportunity outside the EU for something or other. Probably Boris. It was rather nice to see that funny little chap Nigel Farage on television again. He always makes my day. Always there with a cheery smile and a joke is Nige. I must say, though, I thought he was treated appallingly by that dreadful woman on the Good Morning Britain programme. Did you see it? She really had it in for poor Nigel, and for no good reason. I mean, just because he mistakenly implied in his speeches that the £350 million a week EU payment would be spent on the NHS instead. Well, really, it's a mistake anyone could make. So what if that pledge was mistakenly printed in all his leaflets and plastered all over the campaign bus? It was hardly Nigel's fault, was it? You know, the press can be so terribly biased these days. I must say not everyone was happy with the referendum result. Take Jean-Claude Juncker, who, as I'm sure you're all aware, is the current EU president and would-be King of Europe. Poor Jean-Claude displayed a terribly long face when he heard the news. Even his old pal, Naughty Nigel, couldn't cheer him up. What? Surely you didn't believe all the hype, did you? They're actually the best of friends, you know. I've seen them myself, carousing together in a Brussels nightclub, laughing and joking, getting on like 2 Euro standard peas in a pod. Not surprising, really. They're both alike in many ways. Both up for a jolly jape, and known to be a trifle, shall we say, eccentric. At an EU summit meeting, Jean-Claude once jokingly addressed the Hungarian premier using the word dictator, followed up by a warm handshake and a slap on the cheek. He famously kissed the Belgian Prime Minister on the top of his bald head, called another politician fat, then patted the chap's belly. Some people say, rather unkindly in my opinion, that the man may have a drink problem. Nigel, on the other hand, has never had a problem with drink, so you can see why they get on. I'm rather surprised, though, that Jean-Claude and David Cameron didn't get along better. After all, during JC's 18-year stint as Prime Minister of Luxembourg, his government made the country Europe's major centre of corporate tax avoidance. You'd think they'd have lots to talk about. Actually, on reflection, Jean-Claude would never have gone down well with the British public. Not with a surname like Juncker. Just imagine all those old dears who lived through the Blitz, or anyone who built that dodgy Airfix kit of the Junkers 88, for that matter. I noticed the gorgeous Angela Merkel looking very glum at the weekend. Rather a shock to see her like that. Angela's normally so full of life, so cheery, and always with a gay smile to light up any room. Sadly, Mrs. Merkel was looking more like Mrs. Merton, with a bad case of shingles. Jeremy Corbyn was also looking rather tired and forlorn the other day, poor chap. It must be awfully gutting to have lost the campaign like that, and after he put so much effort into it, didn't he? I'm sure his many years as a devout Eurosceptic didn't count in the least bit against him. In fact, his colleagues are positively insisting that Jeremy goes on a long holiday to recover after all his hard work. What a lovely gesture. But of course, being the modest chap and tireless socialist worker that he is, Jeremy has told them all to go and get trucked to a party he's organised to raise funds for the next Labour Party defeat. Election campaign. Speaking personally, I'm going to miss the referendum. There was something rather exciting about teetering on the brink, as it were, not knowing whether we'd fall into a pit of despair on one side or a pit of, something else on the other. We really ought to have another one soon. Perhaps I'll move to Scotland. Oh, and if you're wondering how I voted, I didn't, in the end. Tried to, but by the time I'd found a parking spot for the old 60-foot-long intercooled turbocharged V12 Scania, the polling station had closed. Bugger. Well, better luck next time, eh? Oh, I say, is that the time? I must dash. I've got a rather large consignment of toilet rolls for the EU building in Brussels. Seems there's been a mass outbreak of diarrhoea for some reason. Well, chin chin, you lucky truckers. Speak to you again soon. Bye-bye. Cheery-ho.